And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is November the 6th, 310th day of the year. Just 55 days remain till the year is over with, and we get to start a new year. Holidays observances is National Nachos Day. Cheesy tortilla chips, jalapenos, beans, tomatoes, and guacamole. Oh, you got everything you need to throw a party. Lori Krathong. That is a festival celebrated across Thailand. Symbolizes a fresh start and a deep connection with nature. People release small, carefully decorated rafts called krathongs into rivers and lakes. These rafts are often made with banana leaves and flowers and candles and incense. National Basketball Day, National Cashback Day, and a National Stout Day. That's a favorite among beer connoisseurs with its dark hue and bold taste. National Ladies Learning Code Day, National Men Make Dinner Day. When the aprons come on and the sizzle fills the kitchen, it's a culinary showdown. Dog Film Festival, National Saxophone Day, and a National Project Management Day. Manage the art of juggling tasks and rallying teams and achieving goals. And a National Day for preventing the exploitation of the environment in war and armed conflict. World Left Stop Shouting Day, National Team Manager Day, National Report Home Health Care Fraud Day, Marooned Without a Compass Day, Children's Book Week, National Medical Cannabis Week, Marzipan Week, Rad Tech Week, National Animal Shelter Appreciation Week, Drowsy Driving Prevention Week, Yiping Lantern Festival, Pomegranate Festival, Artes Mundi, National Patient Transport Week, National Fig Week, Polar Bear Week, World Communication Week, and of course we have the Cuckoo Dancing Week. Famous people born on this date: Ethan Hawke, Emma Stone, Mariah Shriver, Sally Field, and Mohammed Hadid. Well, let's see what stories we have in the news, because there's always something going on. Well, Charlie Kirk's widow has a message for all those who enjoyed watching her husband be murdered. She's not exactly a happy camper with those folks. And Donnie may have an issue. Pressure mounts on Hochul to back Mamdani's plan to raise taxes for New York City. Having lived there for 3 years, I can tell you taxes are already fairly steep. And his plan is to raise them some more so that he can give all his free programs. She was heckled after she discussed tax the rich, which is everybody's favorite watchword there in New York City. Well, the House Democrat criticizes extreme left in a shocking 2026 announcement. Represents a district that President Trump won in 2024, and he's not going to seek re-election. Representative Jared Gold, a Democrat of Maine, announced his plans in an op-ed for the Bangor Daily News on Wednesday. That's the day after Democrats swept the electoral victories in Virginia, New Jersey, California, and New York City. He said, "I've never loved politics, but I find purpose and meaning in service. And the Marine in me has been able to slog along through the many aspects of politics I dislike by focusing on the good work that Congress is capable of producing with patience and determination. But after 11 years as a legislator, he's ready to give it up. He's tired of the increasing incivility and plain nastiness that are now common for some elements of our American community. Behavior that too often our political leaders exhibit themselves." Well, CNN anchors pushed back on the liberal critics, saying her job was not to take down Trump. CNN anchor Caitlin Collins insisted her job was not to take down Trump, but as she defended her controversial 2023 town hall meeting with him Wednesday. Comedian Hassan Minhaj asked the Source host about the town hall on his podcast and whether it was a bid by the network to win back Republican viewers. She said the event was similar to other CNN presidential town halls because Trump was very clearly preparing to run for office again. Well, despite the backlash she got from liberals, both inside and outside of CNN, she maintained her job was to report on the reality of his potentially running for office again, not to try to attack him. Well, it's high stakes on the high seas as the U.S. and China test the limits of military power. The guided missile destroyer USS Higgins slipped quietly into the contested waters near Scarborough Shoal on the morning of August 13th. As it pressed toward the edge of China's declared territorial sea, shadowing vessels from the People's Liberation Army locked onto its wake. Beijing wasted no time issuing a formal rebuke, saying it had monitored, warned, and expelled the U.S. warship for violating Chinese sovereignty. Washington's response was terse. U.S. Navy insisted Higgins' passage, part of a freedom of navigation operation, was fully consistent with international law and that China's assertions to the contrary were false. We're going to keep pushing and we're going to wind up in a shooting war. And then let's see what folks think about that. Well, top Democrat has changed his tune on eliminating the filibuster under Trump compared to under Biden. Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, avoided answering whether he'd support eliminating the filibuster, as he did under President Biden on Wednesday. Raskin was asked by CNN's Dana Bash about President Trump's recent comments regarding several Republican losses nationwide Tuesday night and the ongoing government shutdown. He said one of the things he's been talking about for the last couple of days more intensely is getting rid of the filibuster. And that's something you wanted to do when Joe Biden was president. Things weren't getting through the Senate. So is that an area where you're going to agree with him, she asked, and he wouldn't answer the question. He said, we don't need a procedural fix at this point. We need the Republicans to recognize there's a health care crisis they've imposed on the country. Yes, we need to give health care to everybody in the world to make the Democrats happy. Well, Jelly Roll claims Louis Vuitton employees treated him like a criminal during a Sydney shopping trip. On Wednesday, the Grammy-nominated star took to social media to share his experience. Said the employees looked at him as he was about to rob the store. He said, hey man, the Louis Vuitton in Sydney legitimately just treated us like we were going to come in and rob the place. He said, I've never been looked at like a criminal. Last time I was looked at like a criminal this bad, I was an actual criminal that bad. Representative for Louis Vuitton didn't immediately respond, and the Save Me singer's been open about his past legal troubles and battle with addiction. He actually served a year in prison and 7 years of probation. Jelly Roll's whose real name was Jason Bradley DeFord said he was arrested when he was 16 and charged as an adult with aggravated robbery and possession with intent to sell. He said, I never want to overlook the fact it was a heinous crime. But now he's making more money than he knows what to do with as a singer. So he's offended at being treated like a criminal. Well, a tourist hotspot's been blasted for normalizing theft with phone snatching awareness campaign. It was debuted in London this summer. It's facing backlash. Both the residents and visitors criticizing officials for failing to tackle crime problems head on. It's the Mind the Grab initiative. It aims to raise awareness of widespread phone theft among the city's iconic Oxford Street shopping district. Bold purple chalk signs on the edge of the sidewalk say mind the grab and step back from the curb. Phone snatching hotspot. Westminster Council Metropolitan Police Service have partnered with Currys, the UK's largest tech retailer, to remind pedestrians of thefts on mopeds or e-bikes along the busy streets. You're standing there on the curb talking on your phone. Somebody comes by on a moped, grabs your phone, and takes off. That can be embarrassing, to say the least. Well, the FAA flight cuts have hit 40 markets as the airlines work to ease the travel impact of the shutdown. They've cut air traffic by 10% across 40 markets amid the shutdown. It's expected to cut thousands of flights per day. Well, President Trump has called out Mamdani's very angry acceptance speech, warns communism never worked anywhere. President Trump called out the new mayor-elect of New York City. He gave a very angry acceptance speech, cautioning that communism never worked. Trump reacted to the results of the November off-year elections on Wednesday on a special report with Brett Bauer. Republicans Jack Ciattarelli and Winsome Earl Sears fell short in closely watched gubernatorial races to Democrats Mickey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger in New Jersey and Virginia. And in New York City, Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani was elected mayor. We'll see if he can achieve anything with his pie-in-the-sky programs. Well, the Stars United's Fox Nation's Patriot Awards gear up to honor the heart and heroism of America. This year's recipients represent the best of America, including first responders, military members, and community leaders that make a difference. It's the 7th annual event. It's going to take place tonight at the Tillis Center in LIU Post in Greenville, New York, and it's going to stream on Fox Nation at 8 p.m. Fox News' Sean Hannity, host of one of the TV's most watched primetime shows, returns to lead the ceremony for the second straight year. Well, Penn states are offering the biggest property tax savings for American homeowners. West Virginia residents pay a median of $728 annually. New Jersey homeowners face $9,413 median bills. Property taxes going up across the country, but where you live makes all the difference. The median U.S. property tax bill in 2024 rose to $3,500, up 2.8% from the previous year, largely driven by surging home values and shifting local tax rates. But some homeowners are paying a significantly different amount due to the states they live in. And tax growth has varied widely state to state, including some states where tax burdens are outpacing home price growth and others where property taxes are falling, even as home values appreciate. And we'll see what happens in New York City, because he has dreams of taxing the rich, which is anybody with more than $1.50 in your pocket. Well, ICE operations have prevented nightmares and PTSD in massive Texas operation. The ICE and other federal and Texas officials carried out a massive 10-day operation in Houston, resulted in over 1,500 arrests, including aggravated felons, gang members, sexual predators, a murderer, and a number of others. In a Wednesday statement, ICE Enforcement Removal Operations Field Office Director Brett Bradford announced that despite the conditions becoming increasingly dangerous for officers as a result of the spread of violent political rhetoric and intentionally false information, agents arrested 1,505 illegal aliens in Southeast Texas operation, ran from October 22nd to the 31st. He said the arrest of gang members and child predators and other violent criminals prevented countless Houstonians from having to suffer from the nightmares and PTSD that comes from being a victim of violent crime. These arrests came after another ICE Houston operation in August resulted in 822 arrests, and another in February and March that led to 543 arrests. But there's millions of undocumented immigrants here. Can they all be gotten? I tend to doubt it. Well, Michigan State, there was a reverse course on co-ed community bathrooms after a complaint. Michigan State University partially reversed course on its decision to make all community bathrooms in its honors dorm co-ed following complaints from students and parents who said the arrangement made them uncomfortable. They placed new signs at Campbell Hall last week to label some bathrooms by gender. That's a shift that came after a formal complaint and survey results showing unease among residents about a $37.1 million renovation that turned all 20 community bathrooms into unisex facilities. According to what was said, the parents weren't notified beforehand. Bathrooms no longer be separated by gender, prompting at least one student to seek out other facilities, according to a parent's letter. These facilities were the first co-ed community bathrooms of their kind in any of the institution's 27 dorms. Said it was moved to unisex community bathrooms at Campbell Hall to adapt to a future shift in student populations. Following reviews of the survey data, the decision made to provide options for students. The honors dorm spans 4 floors and includes 20 shared bathrooms along with 5 single-use restrooms. The spokesperson, Kat Cooper, said she wasn't sure how many of the community bathrooms will remain unisex and how many will be assigned as male or female. Even though they seem to overlook it, there are males and there are females. New pancreatic cancer treatment wakes up immune cells, according to researchers. Scientists have created a new antibody treatment that helps the immune system recognize and attack pancreatic cancer. Uses a sugary disguise to trick the immune system into the pancreatic cancer cells use a sugary disguise, trick the immune system into ignoring them. Most current cancer immunotherapies target proteins or genes, but this new therapy focuses on the sugars on the cell surface, blocking them so the immune cells can find and attack the cancer. That's according to researchers at Northwestern College in Chicago. Well, a federal judge has hit the DOJ for indict first, investigate later approach in a court hearing. Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick of the Eastern District of Virginia criticized the Justice Department for allegedly being too quick to indict in high-profile cases on Wednesday. There was a brief hearing regarding the case against former FBI Director James Comey. He says, right now, we're in a bit of a feeling of indict first and investigate later. He questioned prosecutors about their handling of data acquired from a number of search warrants between 2019 and 2020. That information is now being used in the Comey case. Judge pressed prosecutors on whether they may have viewed information that may be protected by attorney-client privilege. He also noted the size of the trove of documents, saying Comey's defense team has been placed at a disadvantage with unlimited time to view the set. Government's had this for 5.5 years. It's an unfair burden the government's putting on the defense, but I don't see another path forward. Comey's team has tried to have his case dismissed, arguing he's the victim of selective prosecution by President Trump. And, of course, what they did to President Trump was the very same thing. But that's okay because he's evil. Just ask him. Well, Team Israel gymnasts have spoken out about being barred from the World Championship by the Indonesian government. The Israeli national team gymnasts have found all their work training for the World Championship would go to waste just days after their country's historic peace deal to end the war in Gaza. They just experienced the joy of seeing the last remaining live hostages return home. Then they got shocking news. It came out of nowhere. Learned from a news article, the Indonesian government was blocking their visas to enter the country for the 2025 World Artistic Gymnast Championship in Jakarta. They were told their visas were being denied due to safety concerns by the Indonesian government. Apparently, participating would endanger them and the other national delegations. But their own security team had given clearance to enter the city after an inspection beforehand. It's still up in the air. Well, Jay Jones's victory means for Democrats and the new era of violent rhetoric is under discussion by so-called experts. Democrats in Virginia elected an attorney general who privately fantasized about murdering his political opponents. Raises questions from experts who spoke to Fox News about whether the Democratic Party is serious about condemning political violence. Some of this rhetoric is absolutely ridiculous. Well, University of Chicago was silent about an anti-ICE professor's employment status a month after a rally arrest on violent felonies. The Eamon El-Hadi arrested October 3rd outside the Broadview, Illinois ICE processing facility, charged with 2 felony counts of aggravated battery to a government employee and 2 misdemeanor counts of resisting and obstructing peace. Since that time, University of Chicago hadn't returned multiple requests for comment seeking information about her employment status at the school, whether she's been disciplined or whether she's still actively teaching courses. As long as they're anti-Israel, according to the universities, that's okay. Well, Starbucks Holiday Cup has gone viral as fans predict a complete sellout within hours of its launch. People buy the craziest things. Well, let's see if there's anything else. Oh, Bronx was rocked by a massive fireball near a van in New York City. Injured firefighters in a massive blast. Multiple firefighters were injured after a burning car erupted in a massive explosion Wednesday evening. Authorities said the blast originated from a vehicle at 7:13 p.m. in a mixed residential commercial area of the Bronx near Fox Street and Westchester Avenue. The Fire Department of New York Chief John Esposito said at a news conference that 7 firefighters were hurt. 3 were admitted to the Trauma and Burn Center at Jacoby Hospital. 5 had burns on their hands and faces. They still don't know what supposedly caused what actually caused the eruption. Well, let's see, is there anything else? Charlemagne the God told Van Jones to shut the F up forever after calling Mondami's victory speech divisive. Yes, there are a lot of, shall we say, ultra-liberal people on the airwaves. I try to be relatively neutral when possible. Now, we were talking yesterday about paranormal events in the great outdoors, and there's been quite a number of them. In Maryland, surprisingly enough, Pocomoke State Forest, it's filled with loblolly pines and cypress swamps and curious river otters and even bald eagles. Forest that covers almost 18,000 acres. Seems to be full of some of the best and most beautiful aspects of nature. But surprisingly enough, it also harbors a dark history and some very unusual occurrences. Darkest part of Pocomoke's forest history is that of slavery. It's not uncommon for slave owners to have affairs with the slaves, and when those young women became pregnant, considered better to kill the baby, usually by drowning it in the swamp, than allow it to live, and which would make the master's indiscretions public, shall we say. Sometimes the mothers were also drowned. Abuse was common in the region. One of the most common sightings people reported in this forest is a slave dressed in ragged, worn clothing from the Revolutionary area and wandering through the dense forest, mourning. It's believed the men are probably mourning the loss of a beloved wife or a daughter. Or maybe the women are mourning their murdered babies, or maybe a daughter or a grandchild. State Forest is one of the haunted forests that include the manifestation of mysterious elementals. Elementals, of course, are nature spirits. They manifest in what might at first glance seem to be a simple act of nature. When they make their presence known, it's either through mist or lights. It doesn't take long for an observer to realize that nature's got very little to do with the sighting. One young man had a downright frightening encounter with what may well have been an elemental, driving his car through the forest to a neighboring town, Snow Hill, when he spotted a very bright object in the road. As he got nearer, he realized it was a glowing yellow object, looked like a box. began to inch his car closer when his engine suddenly died. Of course, he was, shall we say, frightened out of his wits and just sat staring at that glowing light and hoping it wasn't going to hurt him. About 15 minutes, that object slowly drifted off the road into the wooded area, and as soon as he did, the car restarted by itself. He didn't have to turn the key. Another incident involving light of a different sort occurred in the early 1920s. The ministry had been holding a revival in the area at the church located inside the edge of the forest. A group of women had been converted during the revival, and their husbands were far from happy about it. These men decided to take matters into their own hands by planning to arrive at the church to give the evangelist a beating he wouldn't soon forget. And once that was done, they planned on burning down the church. They got to the church that night. Their leader marched up to the church door with his gun held tightly in his hand, raised his other hand to open the door of the church, but that hand wouldn't move. He was frozen helplessly in place, like a living statue. The other men rushed the door, but all their combined strength couldn't cause the wooden door to budge an inch. Unexpectedly, in the darkness, they saw a ball of fire descending from the sky. This ball of fire reached the roof, but no smell of burning wood or smoke. And as it hit the ridge row, it split into two parts and slid down the sides of the church. Now, what happened next, nobody really knows for sure. Paralyzed man can move again. The entire group ran quite literally for their very lives. Something or someone was protecting that church and the evangelist that night. So if you decide to pay a visit to the Pocomoke State Forest, don't be surprised if you encounter an elemental. If you're fortunate, it's going to be one of the fairy-like manifestations of light. But just remember, sometimes these elementals take the form of fearsome goblins formed from the mist. And if you should see a slave running around, take a moment to remember the mistreatment he or she received and try to honor the memory of whomever they may be seeking. Well, from Maryland, let's go to England. Daring Woods. This is a beautiful wooded area in Kent, England, near the village of Plunkley. Looks like a peaceful forest of trees full of lush plants and fragrant flowers and active wildlife. But don't allow its peaceful appearance to deceive you. Its nickname is the Screaming Woods, and it's the site of about 50 disappearances and an unsolved murder from the 1940s. One of the stories associated with this forest is the Daring Woods Massacre. 1948, the bodies of 20 people, including 11 children, were found dead in the woods a few hours after they had passed away. All the victims came from 5 families in the nearby town of Maltman's Hill. The bodies showed no sign of injuries and no cause of death could be found. The night before, local residents saw lights coming from the forest. What drew this group of people to the forest to die without any obvious cause is anybody's guess. Many thought it might be a malicious entity still dwelling in the forest. But again, nobody knows. 50 years to the day of the Daring Woods Massacre, locals witnessed a mysterious light in the sky shaped like a cobweb, hovered over the forest for a considerable time. 4 college students disappeared into the woods that night, were never seen again. Even their bodies weren't found. And there's rumored to be a variety of ghostly inhabitants in the bounds of Daring Woods. One of the better known and most often witnessed ghosts is believed to be an army colonel who took his own life in the woods during the 1700s. Consider the experience of one young man walking through the woods at dusk. Trees caused the woods to become darker much faster than the surrounding area. Casually making his way along one of the century-old paths, he saw something move in the trees up ahead. And his steps quickened and a cold chill came over him. He realized he was looking at the body of a man hanging from a tree, swinging on a rope. The young man rushed to aid the man, only to have him and the rope both vanish in front of him. Later learned he had encountered the famous colonel who had been witnessed marching through the woods, maybe to his death. Another infamous ghost is the highwayman, a robber and murderer named Robert Dubois, who attacked people on nearby roads. Said members of the local community captured him and dispensed their own justice. When he was found hiding in the hollow of a tree, they impaled him in that tree and ran their swords through his body before they cut off his head. His ghost had been seen in the woods, dressed in period clothes and not believed to be very friendly. Can't imagine why. Usually appears near an oak tree in an area aptly named Fright Corner. Now, Lady Deering, whose family named the Screaming Wood Bears said to haunt one of the local churches after her death. There'd be a terrible pounding on the church door after midnight every night, followed by an incessant flickering of lights. Activity said to have stopped after her body was exhumed and placed, nesting doll style, within 7 coffins. No one of the ghosts remaining in the woods is a gypsy woman who is believed to have accidentally burned herself to death after falling asleep with a lit pipe, although it does seem that foul play might also have been involved. And a nearby brick factory was the site of a tragic accident when one of the workers was killed. This gentleman, who said to haunt Deering Woods, was either drowned in a pit of clay, which is, of course, considered a very horrendous slow death, or was crushed when a wall of clay fell on him. That is a good reason why this forest has been nicknamed the Screaming Woods. Day or night, during any time of year, there's a good chance visitors to the forest will hear the sounds of screams. Some say the screams coming from those lost in the woods and who were never found. They cry out for help. The woods are dense, and before many of the trees were cut down, said to be easy to get lost in. No way of knowing for sure how many people are lost inside the woods throughout the years. Oddly enough, most of the bodies are never found. Where'd they go? Why were they never found? Is there some connection to the Deering Wood massacre? Others believe the screams are those of the 20 people who died inexplicably in the late 1940s. Whatever the source of the screams, you'd like to also hear creepy whispers, unexplained moans, and footsteps with no corporeal body to go with them. So if you decide to pay a visit to Deering Woods, don't be startled if you hear a scream or encounter the hanging body of a man dead for over 300 years. And don't be surprised if you get your pictures back only to find you weren't alone in the forest. A lot of folks have captured pictures of ectoplasm and mist and orbs not visible when the images were taken. But from Deering Woods, let's go to Epping Forest in England. It stretches from east of London all the way to Essex. It covers about 6,000 acres. It's got a rich, sometimes dark history dating all the way back to the Iron Age. For a lot of years, it was a hideout for criminals, as its dense nature was an excellent place to dump the bodies of murder victims. Been a dozen found since the 1960s. I'm talking about murder victim bodies. Epping Forest is rather notorious for the crimes committed within its confines. There have been murders and rapes and vigilante justice taking place within this densely wooded, beautiful forest. And this darkness, of course, has left an indelible mark on this lovely area. Now, near Epping Forest is a pond that was the site of several mysterious apparitions starting in the 1960s. Human figures, believed to be soldiers, have been seen emerging from the pond on horseback. They seem oblivious to anything around them as they ride toward the town. These phantom men on horseback disappear within moments of emerging from the water. Deep inside the forest is another pond, with a far more macabre reputation. At this spot, one rarely hears a bird singing or the rustling of small creatures. It's unnervingly silent. It's known to many locals as the suicide pond. It's been the location of multiple suicides extending back 300 years, with the suicide murder of a young couple. Seems the young girl's father found her out about her secret meetings with the boy near the pond. In a rage, the father brutally murdered the daughter at the location of their clandestine rendezvous. When the young man discovered what happened, he killed himself. Since the first incidents many years ago, a lot of folks have been drawn to commit suicide at this location. Most recent suicides believed to be a young mother who took the life of her child and her own at the suicide pond. So the question becomes, is there a malevolent entity luring them to their death, or maybe the ghost of the unhappy young couple? Those who know the location of the suicide pond are reluctant to reveal it for fear people with no suicidal intentions to be drawn to their deaths there. There's another area known as Hangman's Hill. It's got a disturbing reputation all its own. Some have parked on the hill to enjoy the fresh night air and listen to the sounds of the forest filled with animals and insects, when suddenly the peaceful, soothing atmosphere is shattered by a blood-curdling scream. Unexpectedly, the shape of a man walks by and then vanishes from sight. Problem is, there's nowhere he could have disappeared to, and where he wouldn't have been seen or at least heard. Hill was the site of countless hangings, both of the innocent and the guilty, though some of the unsure whether it was the hangman or the hanged man they witnessed. But whichever one it may have been, there was definitely a figure there. Well, the oldest ghost in the forest is said to be that of Boadicea, queen of the British Iceni tribe who died around AD 60. Army base was believed to have been located at Lawton Camp, not only a notorious epicenter for paranormal activity, but also the location of the notorious highwayman Dick Turpin's hideout. It was there her soldiers took their last stand, and she and her daughter took poison rather than fall in the hands of the Roman soldiers. She and her daughters have been spotted walking the roads in the area of Lawton Camp. Ghosts of soldiers who bravely fought under Boudicca's command might be the cause of the paranormal activity in the area. People have heard a distinct sound of the beating of ancient war drums and marching soldiers with no rational explanation to be found. It seems ancient England soldiers still bravely march on. Dick Turpin's also said to be quite active in the area. He was tried and hung in York for a murder within Epping Woods. A well-known British paranormal group attempted to make contact with Dick Turpin or something or someone believed to be Turpin and were led off the well-beaten paths deep into the forest. They required the assistance of a forest keeper to find their way out. Well, there's good reason to believe he's the only criminal ghost to haunt the Epping Woods, considering it's been a popular hiding place for criminals over hundreds of years. Should come as no surprise, visitors to the forest have found themselves touched or shoved or even pushed by someone or something that just isn't there. Full-body apparitions not uncommon include a headless horseman, not unlike the fictional Ichabod Crane in the colonies, and a man wearing a distinct tricorn hat and riding a glistening, powerful black stallion. Additionally, the ghost of a troubled young man is run out in front of cars passing near the forest, makes eye contact with him right before he disappears. And there's no denying the beauty of this forest, despite its somewhat dark history and macabre reputation, which might be the reason for its very active paranormally. For those who pay it a visit, don't let a ghost claiming to be the interpreter encourage you to leave the well-trodden path. And if you see a dark pool of water surrounded by deafening silence, you need to get away from it. Don't become another sad story in the long history of Epping Forest. Well, from England, let's go back to Massachusetts. Freetown Fall River State Forest, often referred to simply as the Freetown State Forest. It's well known in the area for the strange occurrences happening in and around it. It covers an area of about 5,500 acres and includes 50 miles of trails and unpaved roads. It's actually a beautiful forest, but it hides a less than pleasant history, including stealing land and cult-related murders. In addition, it's located in the infamous Bridgewater Triangle, a 200 square mile section of land within Massachusetts, full of mysterious, inexplicable activities. Beyond ghosts and hauntings, cryptic sightings, cattle mutilations, UFO activity, and a lot more have occurred in this epicenter of this forest. A lot of folks believe the forest is cursed because it was unfairly taken, without consent, from the Pocasset Wampanoag tribe by greedy settlers and businessmen. And to make matters worse, the tribe fought on the English side in the late 1600s during the Philip War and given 190 acres of land in the area, which became the Watupa Reservation, which was taken from them in the early 1900s to eminent domain. According to records, Freetown needed a water supply and the tribe's land was in the way. Some of that land was returned in the 1930s but didn't truly settle on the issue. Many believe the area of ground will remain cursed and is given back to the Pocasset Wampanoag tribe. Psychics visiting the forest claim to have communicated with numerous Native American spirits haunting the area in retribution for how they were cheated out of their land. A lot of hikers have passed through the forest, uncovering the remains of what is believed to be satanic ritual sites. And the possibility of satanic rituals is not to be discounted in this area. In the late 70s and early 80s, women were brutally murdered by a man who was a fascinating combination of a cult leader and a pimp. Not only were these women killed in a horrific fashion, their lifeless bodies were abused in unspeakable ways as well. Now, it should be noted that the deaths were offered sacrifices to the woods. You have to wonder what kind of evil entity lives in these beautiful woods to carve and crave the bloody, ritualistic atrocities that have been committed there. Not all paranormal encounters in this particular forest fall in the classical ghost sightings. Visitors to the forest have encountered creatures that don't seem to be part of any world we're familiar with. Tribes native to the area gave them the name the Pukwudgies. Walking through a wooded area with a cool breeze and a rattle of fall leaves passing through the trees. May seem like a typical wander in the woods, but then there's strange things that happen. Rocks being thrown through the sky directly at you from the tree line bordering the hiking trail. Fortunately, there's enough time to protect your face with your arm when you catch sight of a human. Your first thought is you've encountered a mischievous child, but the face is like that of an elderly person. And then you see the glint of light on a small knife, as this small person, usually about 3 feet tall, covered with smooth, hairy, gray skin, comes at you. If you live to question folks about it, you'll be told you encountered a pukwudgie. These creatures, whatever they might be, been blamed for a lot of deaths and injuries in the forest. People have had rocks thrown at them and handfuls of sand tossed in their face. Others have been forcibly pushed off the edge of a cliff or even attacked with knives. One of the most dangerous areas in the Freetown State Forest is the Assinet Ledge. It stands above an 80-foot deep rock quarry. Been a site of an unusual number of suicides, and a lot of visitors to the ledge report being overwhelmed with a sense of dread, sadness, and urgency. Others have witnessed people leaping to their death only to disappear right before they hit the bottom of the quarry. Some have seen people standing at the edge of the ledge as if about to take their fatal leap. Concerned, of course, visitors have quickly made their way to the individual's side only to see him or her vanish right before they get to him. Strange lights have also been spotted in the area, with some attribute these lights to ghostly spirits of the dead, and others insist they're manifestations of UFO activity. The Hockomock Swamp is the largest freshwater swamp in Massachusetts, another region with a dark reputation hidden within the depths of the Freetown State Forest. Native name means place where the spirits dwell, and is believed to be the home to both evil and harmless spirits. Settlers, though, quickly changed the name to the Devil's Swamp and tried to avoid it. Most spirits dwelling inside the swamp manifest themselves in a lot of different ways. There are numerous reports of people insisting they've seen huge pterodactyl-like birds soaring over the tops of the trees. They've seen vicious dogs with white teeth and bright red eyes, and others have reported glowing eyes that follow them through the forest. Others have reported a sudden onset of a horrific stench as they walk through the area. Within this forest is a granite outcropping known as the Old Man of Joshua Mountain, or Profile Rock. 50-foot stone formation bears a stunning resemblance to the profile of a man from certain angles, as suggested by the name, of course. Particular area is considered sacred by the Wampanoag people, whose legend states the rock is the likeness of Chief Massasoit Sachem. It's also the location where King Philip's son was killed. Oddly enough, the rock only begins to look like a man in the middle of the 1800s. Locals state the dynamite in the area is what caused the rock to change its shape. But there's another legend behind this formation. One story states a thief would rob homes while the residents were faithfully attending church on Sunday and hide the stolen goods in the cave near Profile Rock. Residents finally caught up with him, holed up in his cave, and after they recovered their stolen goods, they used dynamite on the cave, and the result was Profile Rock. Visitors to the rock have reported all kinds of strange occurrences, including disembodied voices talking in an unknown language, glowing orbs of light that seem to be alive and sentient, and various apparitions. Also been the site of a number of murders and cult activity. Ghostly figures stalking through the woods and sentient light orbs and poltergeist activity into enormously large snakes are just a few of the things you might encounter if you pay a visit to the Freetown State Forest. That's in addition to all the interesting things you might come across. But watch your back if you pay a visit. That's meant literally, because you never know when a pukwudgie might come up behind you ready to give you an unfriendly push. Or maybe insert that knife. Well, from there, let's go to Virginia. Old House Woods. It's a haunted pine woods, covering about 50 acres, located near Diggs, Virginia. Most unusual because it lies near Chesapeake Bay, making it the supernatural haven for a variety of ghosts, including pirates and slaves and soldiers and even phantom ships. Name most likely comes from a colonial area homestead once proudly standing at its center, but that burned down years ago. Old House Woods is known for its paranormal phenomena, and its nicknames include Black Forest and Haunted Woods. Namesake of the woods, the old house, sometimes called the Colonial House, that once stood proud that its center is no longer there. Late at night, when otherworldly mist seemed to rise from the forest floor, it said that the house can still be seen from a distance. It appears tall and majestic, as if it never burned down. And if you decide to approach it, though, it's going to vanish before you get there. The house almost burned to the ground several times because of mysterious fires. Some residents firmly believe the purpose of the fires was to destroy the bodies of trespassers and treasure hunters who had frequented the woods. Others believe the location of the house is actually a portal to another dimension, or maybe a spiritual realm, which is where many of those missing in the woods accidentally stumbled into. The Old House Woods is home to many different types of paranormal manifestations. One time in its history, travelers would simply not pass through the woods because their horses would refuse to enter, as many believe animals can sense things humans can't. It's not uncommon for modern-day visitors to experience strange problems with smartphones and digital cameras and video cameras and other electronic equipment. Same electronics begin to function correctly once you get out of the woods. Numerous visitors have been quietly wandering its trails and encountered the thick mist twisting and turning and swirling until it takes on the appearance of a lady in white. Sometimes she may have a faint blue or green glow about her. She floats slightly above the ground and vanishes without an explanation. You'll likely smell an extremely strong aroma of roses and feel an unshakable sense of great foreboding if you encounter her. That sense of foreboding is limited just to encounters with the Phantom Lady, though. A lot of visitors to the woods report feelings of dread and panic or imminent doom so strong they refuse to go any further into the woods. Others have felt as if unseen hands are choking them, and some have smelled sulfur so strong it almost overwhelming. More than one visitor has been enjoying the peace and beauty of the woods when they encounter a cow or a horse. Now, there's nothing unusual about that, except these cows or horses vanish in an instant without any rational explanation. Phantom crows are not an uncommon sight either. They disappear right in front of your eyes. Others have seen spectral dogs. It would be bad enough to be chased by a physical dog filled with hostility and aggression, but to be pursued by an ethereal headless dog that growls and barks is somewhat frightening. Some witnesses swear these horrific apparitions are hellhounds, but whatever they are, nobody denies they're terrifying. And there's another pair of black dogs that appears in the woods, and these do have heads in their teeth. Multiple people have reported them pouncing from the undergrowth, chasing visitors and attacking cars. One particular story, a man with a pickup truck made a run for his vehicle to get away from him. He managed to get into the cab and slammed the door as the dogs leapt into the bed of the truck, and their growls were menacing as they clawed at the back window. As he started up the truck, he checked the rearview mirror to see whether they still posed harm to him when he saw them suddenly vanish as he looked at them. He whirled around to see where they went, and they were gone. Not enough time for them to disappear into the underbrush, and there's no sign of them on the road. There's one local with unimpeachable reputation that's encountered a most unsettling spirit back in 1926. As he drove his horse and buggy down the Old House Woods Road, he saw an unusual light ahead of him, unlike any he was acquainted with. As he squinted and slowed down his horse, he saw the light was coming from some type of lantern. He also recognized the lantern being held by a man wearing armor, like a Spanish conquistador. Suddenly realized the face peering out from the armored helmet didn't look natural. It was just a skull. At that moment, more shapes began to emerge from the woods all around him. Some carried lanterns, others carried shovels or weapons. He was so overwhelmed by fear he was rendered unconscious. That experience shook him so badly it took several days for him to recover. And he wasn't the only one to see this skeletal soldier. Years later, another man was pulled over to the side of that same road because his car had stalled. As he was leaning casually on the hood of the car, enjoying the scenery, he heard a voice behind him and said, "Is this the King's Highway? I've lost my ship." He turned to see who was talking to him and saw a suit of armor with a skeleton face carrying an old-fashioned lantern just like the other man saw. Others had seen this armored phantom, one of his comrades clutching a heavy, archaic metal sword. And one of the ghosts, sighted regularly near the Old House Woods, is referred to as the Storm Woman. According to eyewitness reports, she's a beautiful woman with long blonde hair dressed only in a period-style nightgown. Like many of the ghostly residents of Old House Woods, her appearances are far from random. Whenever a strong gale comes in off the Chesapeake Bay, she appears above the treetops, frantically warning about danger. Locals make reports of her appearance as a warning that a vicious storm is approaching and urging everybody to vacate the area. One's left to wonder who, if she lost her husband in a storm, is determined to make sure nobody else would suffer that same fate, or if she herself perished in a storm in the Chesapeake Bay. And being along the coast, it's not surprising these haunted woods would include a haunted ship. And where there are a lot of versions of the tale, there's one thing they all have in common: a ghostly three-mast galleon creaking as if beset with wind and rain, sailing along with a ladder thrown over the side with ghostly soldiers clinging to the ladder. Maybe, though, they'd be better described as the remains of sailors, skeletal figures even without their skulls, clad in ragged clothing befitting a sailor of centuries past. These appearances typically occur in stormy weather, just the type of weather coinciding with the pirate's stealthy progress in hiding his ill-gotten gains. Typically floats about 50 feet above the water and stops over the Old House Woods, where the sailors are usually seen disembarking as if to retrieve their previously buried treasure. These sightings are most typically reported in Chesapeake Bay near the Old House Woods or in White's Creek. One gentleman was almost run over in his skiff by this ship. Unable to get out of the way in time, he braced for the worst, but when the ship passed by him, it didn't disturb his tiny skiff at all. This, he insisted, was most unnatural. Some describe a thick fog that creeps along with the ship. Others claim it stops above the treetops of Old House Woods before it vanishes from sight. The ghost crew seems oblivious to anything around them, intent on recovering a treasure they apparently buried many, many years ago inside the woods. The Chesapeake Bay area was for many years a popular port and haven for pirates. The dense foliage and cover of darkness made it an excellent place for individuals to lay low. In addition, the Old House Woods, with its soft soil and dense trees, made for a superb hiding spot for treasure and loot, or at least according to the stories. Some would argue pirates aren't the only ones burying things in the woods. British redcoats in the American Revolution were also believed to hide treasure and loot inside the woods. According to many who've explored, the spirits of pirates and redcoats have been spotted wandering through the woods, sometimes digging in the ground before they suddenly vanish. You have to ask, are they guarding their treasure, or maybe they're searching for it? One local man was out duck hunting alone in White's Creek, spotted what he assumed was a group of black ducks resting on the water. As he raised his hunting rifle to take aim, he realized the shapes were changing. He watched as what he thought were ducks grew and morphed into ghostly soldiers. By the style of their uniforms and weapons, he recognized them to be colonial area redcoat soldiers. He lowered his gun and hurried out of the area when this group of soldiers began to advance in his direction. Well, that wasn't the end of his story, though. As he reached his boat, he discovered one of the phantom British soldiers sitting in it. And the ghost saw him. The hunter threatened to shoot him, and the soldier's response was a little chilling. He said, "You shoot, and the devil's curse to you and your traitorous breed." Well, unfazed by this response, the hunter took aim, fired a shot, at least intended to, but his rifle merely clicked and wouldn't fire. He repeatedly tried to shoot the figure, but as he did, the phantom soldier got to his feet, menace and hostility emanating from him. As he moved toward the hunter threw his rifle at it and ran for his life, luckily escaping unharmed. Like a lot of haunted forests, Old House Woods has been the suspect in multiple disappearances. People go into the woods and simply don't come out, leaving behind no trace of their time in the woods, no bodies to be found. So if you choose to visit Old House Woods, sometimes called the most haunted spot in Virginia, be prepared for the most unlikely occurrences. From headless hellhounds to skeletal sailors, there's no shortage of ghosts and mysterious phenomena. You might want to wear a sweater, though, if you do go inside, because inside the forest it tends to run about 10 degrees colder than its surroundings. And be careful, since its ghostly inhabitants have been known to get rather violent. Some paranormal groups have actually recorded the sounds of battle, including voices and cannon fire, as if the redcoats are still fighting a war. Now, then we've got the famous Cannock Chase in Staffordshire, England. It's a densely wooded area in Cannock Chase, considered by many to be haunted, and the sightings of a manifestation of black-eyed children. region is notorious for a series of murders that took place in the 1960s, all the work of Raymond Morris, also known as the Cannock Chase Monster. But these aren't the only paranormal manifestations in the woods. Cannock Chase Woods has been described as a site of high strangeness with typical British understatement. One summer, a group of teenagers was having some fun till about 9:45 that evening when a blood-curdling scream emanated from deep inside the woods, allegedly coming from a young girl. A young lady in the group immediately took off running toward the scream, trying to find and help this little girl. As she dashed through the woods, she fell and injured her foot, scrambled to her feet, and continued to run as the darkness overtook the woods. The cries continued, and she pressed on despite the pain in her foot. She kept hearing that child screaming, "Help, Mommy, help." As the young woman rounded a corner, she saw a 6-year-old girl in a white dress running away, but not in any danger. The teenager stopped and said, "Are you okay? Were you the one crying for help?" The little girl turned her face, looked at the teenager. Her eyes are completely black, iris and all. Looked at her would-be rescuer, turned and vanished into the eerily quiet forest. Police later sent out a search team complete with tracking dogs to try to find the little girl, but they never did find anybody. About 30 years later, another young woman had a disturbingly similar encounter. She also heard the terrified screams. Scooped her own child up in her arms, she dashed into the woods to find the little girl screaming for her mother as she was being tortured. Out of breath and exhausted, she sat down by a tree to catch her breath when every hair on her body stood on end as she sensed a presence near her. She turned and saw a young girl about 10 years old in a white dress with her hands covering her eyes. Stood motionless as the entire woods became silent. Puzzled, the young mother spoke, asked if the girl needed help. The little girl lowered her arms down by her sides, opened her eyes, and looked at the woman. Her eyes were also completely black. Suddenly, feeling as if she was in kind of trap, the young mother scooped up her child and began running out of the woods this time. Similar sightings took place in that same general area associated with the brutal sexual assault murder of several young girls by the Cannock Chase Monster. Unlike the majority of black-eyed kid sightings, this involved only one child rather than a pair. No attempt to enter somebody's house or vehicle. A lot of folks believe these girls are the ghosts of the girls who were murdered. Sightings continued into this century, with the last sighting occurring in 2014. At least the last reported sighting. The story of the Cannock Chase Ghost Girl is incomplete without discussing an indirect sighting captured on camera, made by a group of paranormal investigators seeking ghost footage in the woods near Cannock Chase. And they had 6 hours of footage to process. In the middle of this footage, they discovered something quite interesting. A young girl dressed in a white dress standing a short distance away from the camera. Now, you might write this off as a young woman out playing in the woods, but this girl seemed to have her own independent light source in the darkness. And most recently, there have been sightings of a creature matching the general description of a werewolf. This mysterious 6-foot-tall being has been seen wandering into the Cannock Chase woods, especially near the German War Cemetery. Oddly enough, the area where the sites of animal mutilations for the past 10 years have been taking place. And those who spotted this wolfish being usually assume it's a very large, excessively hairy dog till it springs up on its hind legs and begins to run and walk away. The nature of this beast, of course, remains unknown. There's a lot of other stories about Cannock Chase Woods, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. So until tomorrow at this time, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.